Hello, everybody, and welcome to this video. And on this video, I want to commemorate the memories of two incredible keyboardists that we lost quite recently. One was Chick Corea and Lyle Mays, but also, as we've organized this meeting, we found out that the incredible, legendary saxophone player Wayne Short has died. So rather than just me talk about it, I've got a brilliant guest today on the channel. I would like to introduce you to Tom Alexander. Hello, Tom. How are you?
I am great, Andy. Thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
And we love having you here. And I love to have other experts on the channel that know more than me about stuff. So, Tom, could you tell them who you are, what you do, and all about yourself?
Sure. Yep. My name's Tom Alexander. I live in South Florida, not too far from Miami, and I've been down here about 25 years or so. Originally from Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia, in the Poconos area. I've been a musician most of my life, and I grew up in the movie theater business. My dad and his brothers had movie theaters, so I was always exposed to great movies with great soundtracks, and that was a huge influence on me real early on. And it took it from there. Always loved movies and music, and then my dad was a fan of classical music. His younger brother was a jazz pianist. We had a piano backstage behind the screen, and he'd play, and I always was super interested in that, and that just led to a whole kind of life connected to movies and more so music. And then you'd mentioned the two guys at the top, Chick Corea and Lyle Mays, and those two guys were just massive, just huge influences on me. Once I heard them, the Golden Gates just, they swung wide open for me.
That's yeah, and I hope we can really get deep into them. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you is that the great Walter Kolosky, who wrote the incredible book on the Mavishnok Show, I don't think I could have done my channel without that book. It's so much knowledge that I passed on direct from him. And he said you've got to check out this guy and his album, which is dedicated to Chick and Lyle. So could you tell us a little bit about the album and who's on it and what's on it, and also tell us about how it relates to Chick and Lyle, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the album is by I have a fusion band called Earthcode, which I co-founded with a drummer, good friend of mine, great friend of mine named Tommy G. Lee. Not confused with the other drummer, Tommy Lee, but he was the first Tommy Lee. He played with Blood, Sweat, and Tears for a while, and
If
so
only the other Tommy Lee would come out with his jazz fusion projects. We're waiting for it with bated breath.
yeah, we're waiting, right? That's funny, but but no, we co-founded this band a long time ago. Initially, we started as a duo. We just did a keyboard drum kind of thing, and then we started to add on, and we've gone through a lot of rotating guests, musicians in the group. The core group for this particular project is a man named Emilio Martinez on bass, and he does these gorgeous vocal stacks too, these wordless vocals, sort of in the Lyle Mays, Pat Metheny kind of vibe. And he also played a little guitar on it. But then the main guitarist is a guy named, he goes by one name, Tomachi, Carlos Tomachi, but people just know him as Tomachi. He was a big star in Brazil on television down there, and then moved to the States a few years back. And he was the kind of the core. That's the core four, if you will, of the group. And then we had some additional musicians come in and play on different tracks. Bassists Sean Saul and Rusty Heck, and who were both played with the band out on when we played live shows. We have a great guitarist, old friend of mine and bandmate from Philadelphia named Audric Jankowskis. And he plays on the tune called Chicklets, which was dedicated to Chick. So, and then Michelle Spinelli on a vocal track, kind of a wordless vocal. Great viola playing by Debbie Spring. And lastly, another guitarist from Brazil as well, named Ricardo Amorim. And those folks really rounded out the album, and they all brought their artistry into the project. This is music, by the way, I should say, Andy, that's been written for a long time, because we started this project right after the last Earthcode album, which came out in 2018. And we got sidetracked with studio moves, and then COVID hit, And then people moved away, and we were trying to coordinate all this craziness. And finally, just released the album about a week and a half ago.
And so, can you tell us about the Chick Corea and Lyle May's connection? I mean, have you met these guys, or is it just a sort of distant, inspiration? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I'll start with Lyle, because that story's maybe just a little bit shorter. But when I used to be I used to host a jazz radio show in college in Pennsylvania, and I was the jazz director at the radio station there. So I was always after people to kind of try to interview them. And Lyle was on the list of people I wanted to interview, but never got to do that, unfortunately. Just the schedules just never worked out. But Lyle, from the moment I heard his playing, I think going back to the album he did with Pat, the duo album, As Falls Wichita, So Falls Wichita Falls. Great record, amazing.
Incredible.
September 15th, I heard that, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy's just ridiculous. He was an incredibly beautiful player and artist in every sense of the word. So always followed his career, always listened to his music, with both his solo stuff and, of course, with the Pat Metheny group and whatever other music he was doing. Just a huge fan. So this album, when he passed, I was obviously very saddened, as most of us were, of course. And I said, I got to write some music in that spirit, kind of to capture that essence. And so I did. And so we recorded it. And so, yeah, this album is half dedicated to Lyle and Chick. Now, Chick is a different story. The kind of the gateway to the music of Chick Corea was earlier on. I was kind of like maybe in my last year of high school, and started to hear little things about this guy named Chick Corea, who had been around for a while a long time at that point. But I was hearing it at the end of high school and into college, and particularly that summer between high school and college. I just was like a sponge, just immersed myself in all things Chick Corea, and of course other, Herbie Hancock and Joe Zawinul and John McLaughlin and all those guys. And Keith Jarrett and Jan Hammer and George Duke, and just the list went on and on. But Chick, for some reason, resonated with me differently. And he just opened it's like he had the key to something for me. I was able to discover in myself something I didn't know I had. And he sort of was lighting the way for me. I wanted to, let him know that. And when I was in my, I think it was my junior year of college, and I was still doing the radio show, I got to meet him for the first time. And we sat in the Carnegie Deli in New York at midnight over corned beef sandwiches and pastrami, talking. And I was with one of my best friends in the world, a gentleman named Bill Sod. And the two of us were interviewing him. And he was there with his wife, Gail, and manager at the time, Ron Moss. And the five of us were just eating, breaking bread, laughing, talking, and I just had the tape recorder running. It was more of a conversation or a documentary of the event than an interview. I was really young. I was like 20, 21 years old and nervous, but he made sure to put me at ease. He had children my age, and he was a dad, so he knew I was nervous, and he picked up on it right away. But he was able to just say, hey, relax. We're just hanging out, and sure enough, I just sort of settled in, and we just had a great conversation. And that was the beginning of what became a friendship. Whenever I was on the road, he was on the road, I should say, and anywhere in proximity to where I lived, I'd go see him. And through his management, I was able to get access to kind of take a walk backstage and say hello, and we'd catch up, and it was special. And I'll say the last thing, maybe probably the most important thing, was I had written the tune Chicklets, and it was still in its, I hadn't recorded it yet, other than a solo piano version, but I hadn't recorded the new sort of expanded version. And I sent it to him. I sat in front of my piano with just taping it with my iPhone, and it was his birthday. And this would have wound up being his last birthday. And I sent it to him on his birthday. And he wrote back in 10 minutes. And he said, and I have, in fact, I can call it up on my computer as we speak. He said, Tom, that was the sweetest. Beautiful man, lovely emotional rendition. I feel honored. It brought tears to my eyes. Muchas gracias, amigo. Chick. So when I got that, it made my year. And a year later, we lost him. But you know, that was it. And I remember when I found out, one of my best friends told me, he said, and a bandmate of mine, Andrew Morrell, said to me, he said, I got some news. I hope it's not true, but you might want to check out Chick Corea's website. And when I went on, I saw the news. And of course, I just, you know, like a lot of people, just felt really bad. And I couldn't hold back the tears. I mean, it was a massive loss, you know, just from what he did for me as a musician. He made me want to continue to be a musician. I mean, and I really put it on him. He was the one.
I have got a slight little tear in my eye at the moment, and I'll tell you what it is that I've worked in this business as you for a long time. I've done it 30 years or so. And there's all sort of shenanigans and ego, and it's all about status and people having to prove this to another person, all that type of stuff. And people want to get their way and they think they're right, and then they're insecure at the same time. But in my travels, I've met some really legendary people. And at the heart of music are these absolutely beautiful people that just are filled with positivity.
Yeah.
And when you sent that to him, all you got back from that is the love, his love of what you've done for you, for music, for beauty. There's not 1 ounce of negativity in that at all. It's like, yeah, that's great. I thought you could have done this. It's like, I love this. I'm moved by it, which is fundamentally what music's about. And as we're talking, I think there is something in me. I don't know if you agree, but Lyle Mays and Chick Corea, for me, they don't quite get the accolades of, say, like a Keith Jarrett, or say other musicians, say a Coltrane or a Miles Davis, that have a darkness to them. I think because these musicians were so full of light and the music was so joyful, there's no angst in it. And that's what I got from Chick Corea when I was very young. My dad had a Chick Corea album, which is actually, it was a live album he did with Lionel Hampton, and it was pretty straight jazz.
Yeah. I remember that record. Yeah.
And Gail came on and sang a jazz standard on there. And that was the first.
Come Rain or Shine, I think it was.
Yeah, and I think he does a piano solo called Sea Breeze.
Yeah.
And I remember recognizing a beautiful lightness of touch that was so brittle. It was brittle and accurate, but so light. I mean, that album, Light as a Feather, it just describes Chick Corea's approach. And I went out and bought Romantic Warrior, being a, because I could see that there was guitars on it. And again, on the track, I think, is it Sorcerer? That acoustic piano solo is just, I think it's my favorite piano solo. An incredible musician. When he talked about music with you, did you glean anything from him about his attitude to music and musicians especially?
Well, yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I know he was always professing, he's always talk about communication, communication with the audience. And I know that, I think what fascinated me the most about him is, a lot of musicians let only the music do the talking for them, which is perfectly fine. But he was really a great communicator too. He had fun with the audience. The old guy way back when, Cab Calloway, right, would get the audience to kind of a call and response thing going. And Chick Corea did the same thing. Interesting, both CC, Cab Calloway, Chick Corea. They both, but I never thought of that until just this very second. But I I saw that, and I saw how he got the audience. He engaged the audience right away, made them feel like they were part of the show, part of the
Yeah.
music, that they could contribute to the whole musical thing that was happening. And I thought that was great. And he would always talk, and he joked, and he had a great sense of humor. And so I kind of took that of talking, although I don't I sometimes here's the funny thing, Andy. It's like it depends on the room sometimes. If you're playing at a place that's not necessarily music first, but it's sort of like maybe a little bit background, or kind of also, and also music. It's eating and drinking and also music. The audience a little different than a concert setting. I think if you're in a concert setting, where people are there strictly to hear the music, the level of communication, the level of listening and all that is higher, because that's why you're there, first and foremost. And I think, at least for me personally, I can communicate to an audience more effectively when that's the setting, the environment. And I got that. I really got that from watching Chick in action, and how he would do things. And as far as playing, listening, listening to what's going on around you and reacting and initiating, it's a dialogue, when you're playing with other musicians. And it's like this with other musicians, of course. Not, he didn't own that per se, but he kind of was lighting the way for me in that regard. I mean, the listening and the reacting, and not necessarily duplicating. If somebody plays a little lick and you play the same lick back, it wasn't like that. It was really a compliment and a dialogue. And so I think the dialogue aspect came from him, and certainly rhythmic and harmonic ideas, melodic ideas, approach. More of a philosophy than actually trying to duplicate it. Although I would say this, the last thing I'll say about that is that, in the beginning, when I was just learning and trying to, decide that's what I wanted to do, sure, I would just literally cop this line or rip off, it's like, okay, Chick does this, Herbie does that, George Duke does this. I'm going to grab those lines and learn how to play them. But as you grow, as you evolve as a human being and as a composer, you start to find your own voice. And I would say, he would ask me when he'd see me, "You writing?" I said, "Yeah." It was good. Never stop writing. And his work ethic was unparalleled.
Well, it's
I would venture to say he has the all-time record for compositions. For jazz. I mean, it's like, you look at this, it's unbelievable. I mean, you look at the volume of work this man did.
Yeah, and he doesn't write 16-bar heads either, does he? He writes stuff that's almost like chamber classical music. You
absolutely no.
What my favorite story about Chick, and I think it's a good place to start when you're discussing it. I was once heard an interview with him, and when he was coming up, he really studied a certain trumpet player. I wish I could remember the trumpet player. It may have been Lee Morgan. It was someone of that era that he was a big fan of a certain trumpet player. And the person
was it Blue Mitchell?
Blue Mitchell. That is exactly the guy. Not Red Mitchell, the blue one. Yeah, Blue Mitchell. Well, yes, you know your Chick. This is why you're here. And he said, I learned all his solos. And the guy said, I transcribed them and learnt them all. And the interviewer said, well, on piano. When he went, oh no, on trumpet. And
on trumpet.
On trumpet, yeah. And also incredible drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy had really studied, and I always felt when he formed the Electric Band in the 70s, he had all these virtuosos: Frank Gambale, John Patitucci, Dave Weckl, some of the greatest musicians, but none of them were quite in the same bracket as Chick. I saw the Electric Band, and I felt, even though they were such virtuosos, hovering above them was an even greater master. He really was a true master. So the work that he'd done to achieve that, but I felt, listening to him for years and years, that in the end, for all that knowledge and technique he had, it all just came down to his taste. It was like his whole message was, if you like it, do it. If you don't like it, don't do it. And there's another, my other favorite story was one Frank Gambale told, where he'd done this guitar solo and he'd really nailed it. And right at the end, he'd hit a couple of wrong notes. And he went into Chick and he said to Chick, can I fix those notes at the end of the solo? And Chick went, no. And he said, well, it's a really good solo, but I played some wrong notes. And then Chick turned around and said, so why did you play them then if they were wrong? and that is what you hear. He's totally under control all the time, isn't it? Every phrase.
Yeah.
And also when he comps, can you imagine trying to solo over that guy? Because when you hear him comping, his comping is it's just stronger than most soloists soloing. Incredible musician, and I just don't feel he quite gets it put in that legendary bracket. I always feel that he's not. I think since he's died, people have said that, more. So I think it's a brilliant idea that you're paying a tribute. I think it's wonderful to have people discussing his legacy. This is why I do the channel. It's so important to keep the legacy going. So
and thank you for that. I'll tell you, it's awesome that you're doing that and continue to keep the music alive. You mentioned Walter Kolaski at the top, and Walter's a good friend of mine, and he, great author, great writer. Wrote the liner notes for this Idiom album, so we're thrilled for that. He just beautiful. And he and I did it was like a monthly pod. We did a little thing together, and we'd have some people come on, including John McLaughlin came on the show, which was a great honor, and a few other great folks. Jan Hammer came on, and it was wonderful. And keeping this music, what you're doing with your podcast, keeping this music alive and giving people who love it the opportunity to kind of learn more and interact and all that is just, you can't beat it. It's just great. Thank you.
I think all the musicians that I really love, and we talk, say we take keyboardists, pianists, that would be Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, George Duke, Keith Jarrett, Jan Hammer. If we take those five, that they're my five favorite keyboardists, they're heavyweights. They've come from that 50s, 60s hard bop into free jazz, modal jazz. They understand bebop, and yet when they got to the 70s, they all chose to communicate to the audience. Even Keith Jarrett, who's probably the most esoteric of them all, did Cold Concert, which ended up selling 5 million copies and has reached so many people. And I think that it's something that happened with the 60s, where these musicians realized that they needed to communicate something, and they all did it in a unique way. And in Chick's case, going back to Chick, following his career through, his stuff in the Miles Davis group and just after the Miles Davis group is very esoteric. I'm thinking of Circle, and the stuff with Barry Outshall and his own stuff, albums from that period. And then there's a change, isn't there, when he pulls Return to Forever together, and he manages to communicate to large audiences. And Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays is exactly the same thing. It's Pat has also recorded incredibly dark, esoteric, jazz albums with Ornette Coleman and Derek Bailey, but they have a way of communicating. Can you tell us a little bit about your album and what you're trying to achieve in respect to that?
Yeah, we have a pretty diverse palette. We really enjoy all kinds of music, not just, what would be deemed, we tend to categorize things for people to sort of give a reference point, like, straight ahead jazz or something, whatever, fusion or whatever you want to call whatever genre you are on at that moment. Yes, we explain it, at the top is like, hey, this music is a kind of a fusion of world music, electronic, um, ethnic music from Brazil, the Mediterranean, Africa, and other points on the globe that inspire us. And of course, at the same time, we're not forgetting our heroes, you know, Chick, Lyle, Herbie, Joe Zawinul, Wayne Shorter, John McLaughlin, all those guys that we love. It's all Pat Metheny, it's all there, you'll hear it, it's not necessarily a conscious effort, but it's sort of a, although there's a tune or two on there that are dedicated specifically to artists. There's a tune on there called Hey Johnji, which is obviously a tip of the cap to John McLaughlin. And in fact, I just heard from Walter Kolaski that John heard it and really loved it. And that was another honor for us. I mean, wow, really cool. But I think it's the effort in trying to sort of continue the legacy of these guys that turned us on initially, really, were the gateway to the music. I think is a good thing. I think it's we don't say, hey, we're going to quote this or we're going to do that and we're going to sound exactly like this guy or try to sound like that guy. It's just, it's there. It lives in us now. It's become part of us. Everybody's can be, I think, a musical sponge. And, it's up to you what you want to squeeze out of the sponge and say, okay, this is mine now. This is what I like. And I think, it takes a long time to get there. I think if you're look, here's the thing. I always say I'm a student, and it's always an evolution. I hope that tomorrow I'll be better than I am today. And that's really kind of what I try to do. And I think Idiom, the Idiom album, which is the second Earthcode album, and my 7th, I think, overall, is just a point of growth on the timeline. And I think what it is it's just like, okay, here's where we are now. This is what we're going to try to do. We try to look for new sounds, innovate, do things we haven't done before, and challenge each other. It's like, let's play something we've never played before. Let's compose something that's something we haven't composed before, or lean on things that we don't want to be comfortable. Yet we want to be comfortable playing the music in a sense that we don't want it to be a train wreck, but at the same time, we want to explore and we want to challenge each other and say, okay, you know what, here we go, or let's go into this uncharted territory. What's over here? What's over there? Let's go there.
Well,
looks a little dark over there, not very well lit. So let's go and see what's happening.
Well, what I'd like to chip in here is really interesting. This is what my thoughts are. Is that when I set up this channel, which happened by accident, I was in lockdown and I thought, I'm bored. I'm going to do rank the Mahavishnu Orchestra albums, which I totally did for fun. I put the video out there because my channel was originally a drum channel for me to post videos up and all that. And
what was number 1, by the way?
At the top I put Birds of Fire, but that was trying to me trying to be objective. Without a doubt, my favorite Mahavishnu Orchestra album is Visions of the Emerald Beyond.
Yeah.
Because as much as I'm a John McLaughlin, Jan Hammer nut, I'm an extreme fan of Narada Michael Walden. He's my favorite drummer, and I love Billy Cobham as well. They both of them. But what's incredible about my channel is, sending that love out. Narada got in touch, and now Narada is a fan of the channel, and he's been on, and I've interviewed him, and all that sort of stuff. And you're doing a very similar thing. This is what's really interesting. Is the love travels, doesn't it? Chick's heard your stuff. John McLaughlin's heard your stuff, and I want to get this across to the people watching this channel. If you want to know what this video is really about, because obviously I think I'm going to call it Meetings with Chick Corea, and because that was the interesting thing. But I think what it's really about is there's something really organic going on here, and I'm trying to let it happen. And so my YouTube has put tentacles out across the world, and people who I've read books by, that I've listened to all my life, and Walter's one of them. So when Walter comes back and says, you got to check this guy out, I know that the content of this channel and the people who watch this channel is going to be interested in this, because Walter wouldn't send something my way if he didn't feel it fitted into this world that tiny world I'm creating. So if you're watching this channel, click on the link below, check out Tom's album, check out Earthcode, Idiom, and come back in the comments and tell us what you think, because it's so important to not just celebrate all this old music that we've loved for the last 30, 40 years, but it's also really important to check out other stuff that's going on, especially when it's celebrating this legacy, So I'm hoping, Tom, because we're in the last few minutes now of this thing, this interview, that we could send some people your way, and we could set up another dialogue, and if I can get some fans listening, we can get you back on the channel. But
I'd be honored.
But before you go, I still would like to finish up with Chick. What albums was it for you? What would be your top 3 Chick Corea albums?
Yeah. Boy, that's a great question. And it probably, if you asked me tomorrow, I'd probably have 3 different
That's
answers,
why it's fun. Don't worry about
I know,
that.
Right?
I know on my channel there's probably going to be my 10 favorite jazz fusion albums. I'm probably going to end up with about 5 or 6 videos, all with different albums on. We just don't tell anybody.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'll tell you what. The first time I heard Chick was on the Romantic Warrior album. Somebody said, check this out. And of course, I was just blown away. I'm like, who is this guy? I mean, I'd heard him, but I was still saying, who is this guy? But I think that probably the 3 most influential albums was the first Piano Improvisations album, Volume 1 from 1971 on ECM. Great record. That opened my ears to where piano could go, what's possible with the piano. And this is a guy coming, I had heard classical, the most complex classical music in my life, and I loved it. But at the same time, hearing the Piano Improvisations album was just a different place where the piano can go, and a different mode of expression. If I
could chip in here, for me, it was Piano Improvisations Volume 2. I picked up a copy of that early on, and I love Keith Jarrett and all those solo piano albums, but I'm afraid I've got to admit those 2 Chick Corea albums, what he does on there is just insane. And on Volume 2, that thing where he on a piano, he describes what it would be like to leave planet Earth.
Yes.
Unbelievable. The conception on that album is
they're both great. It's almost like Godfather 1 and 2, It's like which one are you gonna?
I got Volume 1 second, so it was like, oh yeah, that's incredible. But for me, it was Volume 2. But definite, and they don't get mentioned anymore. I can remember I bought it because I got this book on jazz, and it said, this is like turning a tape recorder on in someone's mind.
Yes, that's right. That's right. It did say that. That's it. That's what it was. So that's one I would say, and I'm not ranking them in order. I'm just thinking that you asked for the top 3.
Yeah. It does.
I'm thinking the next one would be a complete departure from that, which was Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, which was the first electric Return to Forever album with
brutal heavy metal Chick Corea.
Yeah, Bill Connors and the train, they'd go back and forth. He and Bill would just push each other. I thought the music was amazing. And I think maybe Friends with Steve Gadd.
Oh, yes.
And Eddie Gomez and Joe Farrell.
Steve Gadd reading the piano score. Can you believe it?
Yeah, right.
Steve Gadd reading the piano score.
Oh man, I would be lost. I'd be forever lost. But
if they had just changed the cover, I think everyone would have hail that as a masterpiece, because that cover does not describe the music contained within, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's the Smurfs on there,
The
right? And,
Smurfs, chick, what were
yeah,
you
and
doing?
I guess he was a fan of the Smurfs. Um, but no, those three. But I mean, look, Light as a Feather, the Leprechaun. I mean, there's just so many great ones. But I think those three had an impact on me directly. You know, they just really just said, you know, they just, yeah, that's what can I say? I'd be blabbering, you know,
Yeah,
trying to
I've
keep
got
going on and on about it.
I've got millions. I always felt that there was a really special relationship between him and Steve Gadd.
Yeah.
And so the Leprechaun and Night Sprite's unbelievable. And
Oh, that's
Friends,
yeah, that's
My Spanish Heart to some extent, but also three quartets.
oh
Three
wow, three
quartets,
quartets, yeah.
masterpiece, masterpiece.
What is it, quartet number two? One for John Coltrane. You
Oh,
know, that was, I mean, that's just
yeah,
whew,
and
burning.
Steve Gadd does an open solo on that. It just stops and he plays an open solo. And
Yeah.
people go on about all the other Gadd solos and on Asia and all that, but that for me, when I heard that, and it was his use of space, because Steve Gadd can play space so well. But
Oh
yeah, and also that Michael Brecker solo on the opening, I think it's
yeah.
quartet
Oh
number one.
yeah. Yeah.
Brecker, Michael Brecker. You know, I mean, these are all the
Another.
greats. What can you say? What can you say?
I mean, he's here. Here's the thing. I mean, Chick really played. I should, or you can look at it the other way. They played with him, but
Yeah.
Chick, you know, with the greatest guys ever. I mean, the greatest musicians that to come along, and all of them are, you know, treasures. I mean, you know, and you know, with Wayne's passing as we record this, I mean, as Wayne's passing yesterday, you know, it just makes you realize, you know,
Well,
we're
I'll tell you what, Tom. How much time have you got? Because we're going to run out now. We have got 1 minute 40 seconds left of this session. But
I've got time.
shall we do another one straight away? I'll send you another
Sure.
Zoom link, and let's
Okay.
talk about Wayne Shorter, because I wanted to do a Wayne Shorter video, and I thought, you know your stuff. So rather than me do it on my own,
Right.
because I'm going to shut this one down, and we'll send another
Okay.
Zoom link, and we'll do another one on Wayne Shorter, because I think we're warming up now, aren't we?
All right. Yeah,
Okay.
sounds good. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
I'll stop recording now. So thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, like it, subscribe it. Check out Tom's album. The link's down below. We're running out of time. This is the problem with Zoom. I need to pay for it. See, I've got to pay for it. I've got to put my hand in my pocket. So join my Patreon. Send me some money over and I can get an unlimited Zoom. See you
There
on the
you
next
go.
video, everybody. Thanks,
Bye.
Tom.